All right, so it's a beautiful day out here, and right behind me, this is the Coeur d'Alene River, and you can probably see that we are in this peak to almost just past peak time of year for fall colors. The leaves are quite pretty. It's a little bit windy, so the water is moving a little bit fast. Now, here's the thing. I'm filming this on my iPhone. It's an iPhone 13 Pro Max, and I've got my Sony camera, all of my gear here, but if I'm being honest, I've really been enjoying just using my phone. The capabilities of the phone have gotten so much better, and what I want to do is I'm going to walk you through just a composition here, and I'm going to simulate a long exposure using an app called Spectre, and it allows me to choose either a 3, 5, or 9 second exposure, and it does this kind of faux long exposure. You'll see, but it's pretty cool because in the water here, there's some leaves that are moving fast, and so you kind of get those trails. And I found a pretty fun composition, and I'm going to walk you through it, how I set it up. We'll try the different lenses on the iPhone. And so what I want to do is I'll put you over here, and I'll show you kind of what I'm thinking in terms of this composition. All right, so here is the basic setup. I've got my Really Right Stuff tripod over here, and there's my Shimoda bag with my Sony gear, but it's all packed away. And all I've got really is this pretty basic phone tripod. Nothing really special to it. It kind of the thing I like about it is that it has this kind of Arca Swiss plate so that it works with my Really Right Stuff tripod. But here is the general composition. So if I kind of, for now, I'll just put it in front, but you can kind of see the way I'm going to use all of this extra foliage here. I'm going to do something. I'm going to move it so that this branch right here is not in the way. But you have this beautiful kind of natural framing with the trees in the background, and you can kind of see, here I'll zoom in, you can see that really nice reflection. And again, we're going to use an app called Spectre to simulate a long exposure. And the only downside to it, if I have to say that there is a downside, is that I don't believe you can save it as a DNG. So on the iPhone here, when you save a RAW file, it's actually a DNG file. So it's probably, I'm pretty sure it's a JPEG, which is okay. Listen, there's still plenty of image data to work with. So what I'm going to do is set the phone in the tripod, and we'll walk through fine-tuning the composition. Okay, so the phone is now on the tripod, and one of the things I first do is I change the lenses just to see the composition. So this is at the ultra-wide lens, this is the standard lens, which I think I'm going to use, and then this is the telephoto lens. And so I like using the main lens as often as possible because the sensor for that lens is typically the best one for the iPhone. The other sensors for the ultra wide and the telephoto are fine, but the main sensor is really the best one. So what I'm going to do is just kind of reposition it just like that. And so now what I'm going to do is switch over to the app called Spectre, and I'll walk you through how I'm going to use that to get the long exposure, or that faux long exposure. All right, so here is Spectre, and there are a few things I want to point out. So you'll see kind of to the left of the viewfinder, there is a little icon with the word stable. And if I move the camera, you can see how it actually has that little, it's almost like a spirit level. So because my camera, or my phone rather, is locked in on the tripod, it's perfectly stable. Then on the bottom left, you'll see that there is this dial here, and it gives me 3 shutter speed options. And then I also have the ability to change my lens. So that's the ultra wide, the telephoto, and the standard, which is what we're going to go with here. So typically what I do is, especially when I'm on a tripod, I'm just going to go ahead and try all 3 different exposures. So I'm going to press the shutter button here, and you can see that it does a 3-second exposure. Then I'll change it to 5, and press the shutter button again. And you can kind of see that the long exposure effect starting to happen. And then finally 9. And of course, we are getting that, the movement in the leaves in the foreground, especially because there is some wind here. So one of the things that I would also do is switch over to the regular camera and just take a regular exposure in case I want to do any masking. Because in this app, you only have the ability to do a long exposure. So I might take one more 9-second exposure here. And again, it's cool to see that effect build up. And I love even the reflection you see in the trees, or rather in the water of the trees in the background. I think that's pretty awesome. So let's go ahead here, and I'm just going to take a still photo as well. And so I'll just take my photo. I'm good there. And the nice thing about this one is that it's a raw photo, so I have a little bit more latitude. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that fun little video of me setting up that shot with my iPhone, which again, I still am constantly impressed with the capabilities of smartphones. Now, I want to talk a little bit really quickly about that Spectre app that I showed you. It's made by the same people who make the Halide camera app, which in my opinion is one of the best camera apps you can get for iOS. Now, unfortunately, both Halide and Spectre are iOS only. I try to make my videos as broadly applicable as possible to the most number of users, or the most diverse group of users, but this is iOS only. There is likely something for Android that will simulate long exposure. I'm not sure what it is, but definitely check it out. So with that out of the way, the Spectre app does cost $3.99, which in my opinion is totally worth it. It's a great app, and I'm a big fan of supporting these developers who are really pushing the envelope in terms of what you can do with mobile photography. Now, for the purposes of editing this video, I figured just in the interest of time, we're going to jump over to Photoshop. Everything that I want to do can be done in Photoshop, and I think you're going to enjoy what I'm going to do here. And it shows kind of the scalability of what you can do when you marry mobile photos with desktop grade apps like Photoshop on the desktop. And you can do probably most of this on the Photoshop app on mobile, but it's just easier to do it on desktop for this video. So let's check it out. Let's switch over here to the computer, and you can see here that I've got two documents open. This is the long exposure, the JPEG, like I mentioned. The Spectre app saves the long exposures as JPEGs. And then I also took that one DNG photo to kind of get a little bit sharper leaves in the foreground. And so what I'm going to do is take this layer here. I already renamed it. I'll right click, and we're going to go to duplicate layer, and I'm going to change the document destination to that JPEG, and it'll copy over as this regular exposure layer. So when we go here, we now have these two layers, and you can see them stacked side by side. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I want to align these two layers, because even though they are basically locked on the tripod and the same lens was used on the iPhone, I just want to make sure that they're aligned. So to do that, just select both of these layers. We'll then go to edit, and then we are going to go to auto align layers. And the auto option is just fine here. We'll click on OK, and Photoshop will align the two layers. You can see that there's just a little bit of a cropping that was done. So what I'll do is press C to enter the crop mode. I'll zoom in just a little bit here, and just bring in the composition just a few pixels, just like that. You also want to make sure that, at least in this case, I have the original ratio locked in. That way, when I crop in from the left or the right, it also will crop in from the top and the bottom and honor that original aspect ratio. So just like that, nothing special. And then we'll click on the check mark to commit that crop. And so now we have these two aligned layers. You can see if I hide the top one, other than the motion in the leaves, they're identical. And again, you can see if you look at the leaves in the foreground here, with the long exposure, they're just a little soft because of that 9-second exposure. It was actually capturing the motion in the leaves. And so what I want to do is all you really care about is the long exposure in the water, that effect. That's really all I want. And so to do that, the easier way for me to do that is to create a mask on the regular exposure layer, because on that layer, that's where the bulk of that layer is going to be kept. All I want to do is bring in the water. So I'll create this mask here, a layer mask in between the two layers. I'll press B for my brush tool, and then I'm going to make sure that the opacity is full. So I'm just going to make sure I have a full 100% opacity here, and that the foreground color is black so that we will reveal the underlying layer. And so let me adjust my brush size, and I'm just going to paint in, and you can see as I do that, that really beautiful long exposure layer. I'm not too worried about bringing in some of that motion because you know, it was moving, so you would expect some leaves to be in motion. And so as I get here towards the edges, I'll drop my brush a little bit and just kind of get these areas here. And then same thing here. Let's go along the bottom of the riverbed here. And just kind of get all that good stuff. And now we've combined these two layers. And if you press the backslash key, that'll show you an overlay of the mask. And so it's an easy way to see if there's any area here that you missed. And I'm not too worried about this here. You wouldn't even see this through the branches that much. I really just wanted the main part of the river. And so we've got that there. And that's, I mean, even if we just kind of left it at this, it's a pretty cool looking photo. Again, to be able to do this with a phone, it kind of boggles my mind. It's a very convincing long exposure. And again, I absolutely love the way you have the reflection of the trees in the water here. And if you want, you can go ahead and, you know, just to see what it looks like, we can kind of mask here and see if that's too distracting. And let me see, let me undo that. Yeah, I don't like that. I'm just going to keep it as is there because, again, I don't really think that the water through these branches will, maybe over here, actually, I'll do that because I see some waves. So I'll keep that there, but I'll keep the rest of it as is. And I did mention that I want to get rid of that little piece of wood in the water. First thing I want to do, though, is I want to combine these two layers to a new layer, and that's called stamping, creating a new stamped layer. To do that, it's Command Option Shift E on a Mac or Control Alt Shift E on Windows. So I'm going to press that, and what it does is it creates a new layer of all the visible layers below it. So here you can see that even though we hid those layers, we now have a combined layer here. We can rename this to a new combined layer just so that we know what it is. And I can go ahead now to the spot healing brush and just get rid of that piece of wood because that was really annoying me. All right, now I did mention in the video that one of the things we could do if we want to is to use the sky replacement tool. It's relatively new in Photoshop and it's extremely powerful. And it makes adding a different sky or more clouds very, very effortless, even with a complex sky like this, because you've got all of these leaves here. And that's partly why I want to show this to you. And so to do that, I'm going to go to the edit menu and then I'm going to select sky replacement. Now, the really cool thing about the sky replacement is that it does an excellent job of masking through even kind of busy, complex foregrounds. So you can see that even though we have all of these branches with these leaves, Photoshop did a really nice job of dropping in that sky so that it actually masks through the appropriate areas. And there are several built-in ones here that come with Photoshop, and just for the sake of everyone having access to the same material, I'm just gonna use this built-in one right here. And we'll click over here, we'll close it, and then I'm gonna brighten it under the sky adjustment section. I'm gonna brighten that sky a little bit. And then to blend the foreground with it, I'm also gonna take this lighting adjustment, I'm gonna drag it down, and you can see that it actually makes the foreground a little bit brighter. And if you bring it to the right, it makes it darker. So I'm just gonna make it a little bit brighter over here. And I'm gonna make sure that we're gonna output that to a new layer. And it's gonna output it to a new group, which you'll see right now. So I'll click OK. And here is our group. You can see there's the sky. And here's the thing. This was a long exposure, right? Like we used a 9-second exposure and there's movement in the water, but the clouds are pretty much frozen. So we need to kind of address that in order to create some sort of visual logic or consistency through the frame. To do that, let's open that group up and we're going to select that actual cloud layer, which is right here. And then I'm going to go to Filter, I'm going to go to Blur, and I'm going to go to Motion Blur. And you can see here with this distance slider, if we bring it to the left, as we increase that slider, you can see more of that motion in the cloud. So it kind of simulates a long exposure. And so something like around 500 pixels looks good. And if you adjust this angle tool right here, if I make it go upward like that, you'll see that the clouds kind of change angle. We don't want that. We'll just keep that 0 so that it's kind of flat and moving along the horizon evenly. And then we'll click OK. Now, because we have the clouds moving here, we want just a little bit of semblance of clouds in the reflection of the water, because as I made a whole big deal about, the water has beautiful reflection in it. Sky is above the water, so there should be some reflection. We don't have to go crazy with this, but I just want to show you an easy way to do that. To do that, we'll take that same cloud layer, we'll right click, and we're going to duplicate it. And then we'll just click OK. I'll take that layer and I'm going to move it for now above the image. Then let's close this sky layer here. Oops, I actually didn't move it out of the group. Let's put it right there. Okay, that's better. Now we can close it. And I'm going to remove that link. So I'm going to unlink the layer, because by default, it'll have that link when you duplicate it. And then I'm also going to delete this layer mask. All right, so there is our sky layer on top of the image. First thing we're going to want to do is flip it vertically. So we'll go to Edit, then we'll go to Transform, and we'll flip that vertically. So now we took that sky layer and we flipped it upside down. And with the Move tool, we'll position that kind of right at the horizon, right around there. And now we'll put that sky layer and we'll put it below our active document layer, which is this image right here. We'll take the that layer and we'll create a mask. So you see where we're going. Now with this mask, I'm going to be able to reveal some of that sky layer below it, only where we want it. And to do that, I'm going to take B for brush and I'm going to make my opacity like 5%, like super, super low opacity, because I just want a hint of it to come through. And with that, I'm just going to, with one stroke, I'm just going to paint through. And you can see we get just a little bit of a hint. So that's one stroke, and you can see the mask is like super, super light gray. As I paint more of that sky will be revealed, but I don't want a lot of it. And I don't care that I'm painting over the leaves. It's such a low opacity that you won't even tell that much. All I want is a little bit of that blue and white to come through. And so if I disable this layer mask, you can see it's really not that much that we did, but we're bringing just a little bit of that reflection onto the surface of the water, which again, it's all about that visual logic. You want to make sure that things make sense. If you have motion in the water, if your exposure was long enough to capture motion in the water, and the water was moving fast, which probably means that there was a wind, it stands to reason that the clouds would be moving at a decent clip as well. So we were able to kind of replicate that. And in my opinion, I really think that the presence of those clouds just adds so much more to the photo. I'm personally a fan because, again, if we hide that, it's fine, it's nice, but I really like what that sky replacement does. And before we wrap things up, there's just one little thing that I want to talk about regarding sky replacement. I'm starting to see, it's an unfortunate thing, but I'm starting to see some photographers like on Instagram and YouTube who actually are amazing photographers who are going out of their way to kind of make fun of or poke fun of photographers who use these kinds of techniques, whether it's sky replacement or even things like dropping leaves in a certain way in a composition or using the Orton effect. And my thing is this, like, I'm not a fan of making fun of other photographers or making them feel self-conscious about it. My thing is, if you want to experiment with these amazing tools to try to change the look of your photo, you should feel empowered to do that. And of course, don't try to pass it off. Like if I were to share this, I would say that I composited in the sky because I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not going to pass it off as this authentic photo. But we don't need this kind of negativity in our lives. And this is the end of my little kind of soapbox rant. If you see people who are kind of making you feel like you're second guessing yourself with whether you should do this or do that, just try it out for yourself. And Worst case, either unfollow those people or mute them if you don't want to unfollow them, but don't let people make you feel badly about trying new techniques. It'll make you a stronger photographer. You don't have to use these techniques in every photo, but I'd rather you know how to use them and be able to pull that tool out of your toolbox than, say like, oh, well, so-and-so said that you're not really a photographer if you do this. Don't listen to them. You're a photographer. If you have a camera, whether it's an actual camera or your phone camera or a pinhole camera, I don't care what it is. If you take a photo, you're a photographer, and just enjoy it. So with that, that's I just want to make sure that, because there are people who've written to me who feel badly about this, and that really kills me, because I want everyone to enjoy this process. There is no, you're not better or worse for compositing your photos, unless you try to pass it off as authentic, or like, photojournalistic. That's not cool. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this. I had a blast trying to use my mobile phone to take this photo. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see more of these kind of mobile style videos. I have another one that I actually just recorded yesterday that I'll work on maybe for next week or the week after. And also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, really quickly, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon, hit the thumbs up, all the good stuff. I'm releasing videos every week, and I just want to make sure that you know when they're available, and I want to know if you enjoy them. So with that, if you are into what I did here with Photoshop, I have another video, and it's basically, I like this video. It's 3 things that I would do in Photoshop that I wouldn't do in Lightroom, where I think Photoshop's a lot better. So I hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.